Oh, hey there, Rich. I think there you go.
Can you see me?
I can see and hear you. How about the same here?
Yep,
Okay, great.
the important folk are here.
God help the rest. How have you been?
Good, been busy.
I bet.
Um, I was gonna ask, nobody else is on yet, are they? No, just you and
No,
I.
but we are being recorded, just so you know.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you later then.
Okay. Um, One thing I did speak with on the 159 East Main Street noise complaint,
Yeah.
Chris Leghorn. And she may or may not be in the audience. If she is, I'll recognize her. I'll recognize the fact that she's there. But she's pretty much good to go. She was, relatively happy with how things went and said there's still some noise concerns during the day, but that because the limits are higher during the day, that she's aware that there's not much that can be done being in an industrial area. But did recognize that also that Nick Osgood, who I did send I told him I would send an invitation. I did, but I haven't heard back from him either way. So he may or may not be here. So I think what we'll do is, if it's okay with you, suspend the order of business,
Sure.
make that the first item, because I think we can get it off the record pretty quickly so that nobody's waiting, and just go on from there. But I think we're prepared to close out the complaint at this point.
Okay, that'd be great. It's been long enough.
Yeah, I think so. I have the, let's see. I had the report from the sound people, and it sounds like they're meeting the requirements. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at it now. Shut down. Shut that down. Yeah. So. Yeah, well, I think what they discovered was interesting is that the ambient noise level in that area is already pretty high.
Hmm.
So, governing noise limit for nighttime operations in residential areas, 50 decibels, and they were able to bring it down with their measuring equipment plus minus a few, to 50. And below, actually, I know that I'm looking at it. So
That's good.
yeah, so that's that one. The Deborah Kramer and the mosquito
Yeah.
discussion should not be too long either. I had a conversation with the person that she recommended talking to from the mosquito control district, and it's not as it was presented at the last meeting. The legislature put forward a bill to allow mosquito control board and um, the state board of health to do spraying in emergency situations out west, primarily because there are no mosquito districts out there. And so it has everything to do with spraying and nothing to do with being able to test or anything like that locally. He said essentially you would have to join the mosquito control district in order to be able to do that. So we're back to square one again.
Okay,
Yeah, so nothing changes there. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hi there. Hi, guys.
hi, Rob.
Hey, Rich.
Good evening. I didn't forget this time. When did you send out the email which had all the attachments?
That went out a while ago, but I can resend it to you if you want.
I had it, now I can't find it.
I'll just resend it. Hold on a sec. Let's see. Oops, wrong one.
Which address did you send it to?
Rich@sagal.com,
Okay, that's fine.
and I just sent it again. I also sent out the, I finally got a report together, a monthly report.
I saw that.
Okay. It's a little haphazard, but it's the best I can do under conditions, I'm afraid.
That's okay. I didn't get it yet. That's surprising.
The email I just sent,
Yeah,
the forwarded, huh, that's interesting. There we go.
okay, maybe one in
Oh, Nick, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
All right, we're gonna try and get you at the top of the agenda,
Okay,
and so hopefully it won't keep you too long.
that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Make up for the last time. Uh,
That's all right.
also, spoke with Chris Leghorn, and she was generally favorable about how things went, so I think we're good.
Oh, good. What'd the board think of the, well, I figured I'd bring it up now, but we can talk about it later when everyone's here. But
Yeah, probably a good idea.
yeah, all right.
here. I found it, Max.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Hey, Fred, long time no see.
Hey,
Claudia.
Hello.
Hi, Claudia.
how are you?
Hanging in there, as they say.
Leaning in? Oh, good.
Hanging in.
Hanging in, oh, okay. Yeah,
Well, Fred, you might be able to put your boat back in the water.
actually, I've ordered it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's like start all over again.
right.
No, but it's amazing how different it is now. It's really changed. It's nice.
Yeah.
You can go sailing again.
Right. Well, the last time we went sailing, we were in that big storm.
Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad.
We made it to Lighthouse Beach and then it opened. We were all the way out past Halibut Point, and it was
Wow.
funny. We turned around heading back, and all of a sudden that dark cloud started. That was scary.
Oh, boy.
We
I watched them all trying to come into the Enniscombe at the same time, including
Yeah.
people under sail. It was really, nobody hit anybody, I must say. They did a good job.
Yeah, scary.
So yes, I shall have my boat maybe this weekend. That'll be nice.
What kind of boat do you have, Fred?
It's called a limestone. I bought it from a couple in the village who'd had it. It was built in 1999. It's fiberglass. It has inboard outboard, so I don't have to deal with a mooring anymore.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's a nice boat for going up and down the river and playing out in the bay. And it goes like Screech.
That's what you want.
That's right. Yeah, it has a serious Chevrolet engine in there.
Oh, great.
Do you go through the cut?
Pardon me?
Do you go through the cut?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
not-
for the schooner races, which won't be happening this year, but,
yeah. No, it's very seaworthy. It's a nice dry boat.
uh-huh.
So,
Hi, Karen.
Is Joe,
Joe is not attending this meeting. He's at Maritime Gloucester for an event there. Excuse me, not an event. They're having a gathering. Excuse me, not a gathering, something else. No.
they're having a
Less than 10 people. Oh, with masks.
Well, should we get started?
sure. Hello, Deborah Kramer.
Hi, Deborah.
What a treat.
Good evening, everyone. This is the City of Gloucester Board of Health meeting. It's a remote meeting. This is September 3rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Everyone's at their home. I need to read this disclaimer. This meeting is recorded by video and audio. in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or other device, there is a raise hand button that you can press when requesting to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communication to be recognized to speak. The listing of matters is those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. And the agenda order can be modified at my discretion. Phew. Okay,
Let her rip.
so going to the agenda. First, we start with public oral introduction. So why don't we, I'll just give a name and people can say their role. So this way the recording secretary will have each voice. Claudia Schweitzer,
Board member?
Fred Cowan,
Board member?
Rob Harris,
Board member.
Max Shank,
Staff,
Karen Carroll,
Staff,
I think that's
Director.
Bob Orlando, recording secretary, myself, Rich Sagal, chairperson. So now we will start with public oral communication. This is a time for anyone in the audience wishing to speak for up to 5 minutes on any topic not on the agenda. If there's anyone who wishes to speak, please signal as I described earlier. Seeing nobody speak or signal, we'll move on. We're going to change the order of the agenda and jump to the update on 159 East Main Street first. This is a noise complaint and sound retest requirement from July 11, 2019. Max, do you want to take the lead on this?
sure. So huge gratitude to Fred Cowan for going out on site for a late night sound test and reporting back his findings. In the board packet was the result of the sound test. It at the locations that were measured, it did fall under the base for the limit, essentially. So they're falling within compliance according to the report. But I know that there were some other interesting findings at that time that Fred, if you'd like to chime in on it.
But just what we noticed is that after everything was shut off at the building, and that the ambient noise was really coming from the neighborhood, and most egregious are the window air conditioners. That on a hot Monday night, for example, one building had 6 units cranking because presumably that many apartments or whatnot. But the cumulative effect of that was really responsible for almost 50 decibels of noise. That what the plant did was match that, and then with things on exceeded. But with it off, it's not a quiet neighborhood.
Yeah.
Unless everybody gets together and changes the noise that they make individually. It does add up to quite a racket.
So the lesson learned is you want to look at ambient noise.
Start off by looking at yourself. Exactly.
I know that Mr. Nick Osgood, the property owner, is in attendance as well. Nick, do you want to provide a few words?
Yeah, I would. I think it's been a good experience working through this issue. I'm happy that we've got the decibels down to an acceptable level for the neighborhood and for the community at large. For us, it was always a goal to get this resolved. And I can't speak for the prior owner, but I know that our efforts, just through continued evaluation of our systems and our process, enabled us to get to this point. It was very helpful for Fred to be out at the site, to actually be with our sound engineers. I mean, these guys are great. They walked us through. We went through a process, and I think that the outcome, while it took longer than we expected or wanted it to,
We lost you, Nick.
You know, part of the little surprise was the ambient in the neighborhood. I think that was the surprise that none of us were really anticipating. We thought we were the major contributor, which, you know, when all systems were running, yeah, we were. But, you know, we got that under control through our measured behaviors and checking and adjusting our systems and, you know, just modifying and changing our, you know, equipment. You know, that was what should have been done, and we did it. So I'm very happy with the outcome. Again, you know, open to discussion with the neighbors as time progresses if something comes out of compliance or they feel something's loud. So we're open to further discussion at any point in time. So this is where we stand.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. That is very
Well, thank you
helpful.
for your cooperation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know that Chris Leghorn is in the audience as well. Chris, did you want to say anything?
If you do, Chris, you're muted.
Mm-mm.
Well, anyway, let's see. So I asked her to unmute, nothing yet. So having said that, I did speak with Ms. Leghorn earlier. Her comments were that the changes that were made did make a significant difference for the evening. Concerns remain for her for the daytime hours, but she understands that there are greater levels allowed during the daytime hours, and you know is appreciative of what's happened, and hopes that if there are future issues that the lines of communication that have been established up to now will continue to be in place, so that the neighbors will have an opportunity to hear the voices, have their voices heard. Excuse me.
Excuse me, Max, did you say that it did make a difference? The work that they had done did make a difference? That she acknowledged that it did make a difference at
Yes.
night? Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Were the other neighbors notified of the findings?
Ms. Leghorn was really the only person, and I know that the previous folks who, I mean, if we're talking 2 years ago, I think at this point, they have haven't had any communication about this issue with the department in quite a long time.
Right.
So Ms. Leghorn has a friend that lives in the neighborhood, so I would imagine that they're communicating. So that's as far as we've gone with it.
Okay.
I will notify the building department though, so that they're aware.
But there was one, the other person you might want to notify is the ward counselor, Scott Nemhard.
Oh, good point.
Because
Yes.
there was another family that had repeated issues and came to several meetings and wrote a
Yeah.
lot of letters. I can't remember their names.
Yeah,
But I know that Scott was trying to be helpful to them.
absolutely. That's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Will do.
Any other comments on this? Do we need to take any action, Max?
No, actually, there's, the board's responsibility in this was to investigate the issue, see if there were any findings. There were obviously findings. Mitigation took place, and it seems to be all is well for the moment. So no, there's no further actions to be taken. We'll just close out the item on the agenda.
Okay, I think
Cool.
we're done with that. Again,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Nick.
Nick, for your cooperation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the time that we needed to resolve the issue and work through it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Have a great night.
You too.
Moving on back to the agenda. We'll go to new business, options for mosquito control district participation.
So I was approached by Deborah Kramer. I'm sure a lot of folks know Deborah and the great work that she's done in the community as well as for conservation. The original conversation was in regards to new legislation that had come through. I put a copy of the bill in the board packet, and whether or not some of the provisions within that legislation could be used for just partaking of the testing component of being in the mosquito control district, or even if you need to be in a mosquito control district to be able to do that, whether or not you could just go forward to the Department of Public Health or the Mosquito Control Board at the state level and ask for testing. I read the legislation pretty thoroughly and also looked at the amendments to the legislation as well. And a lot of it, and also had a conversation with a person, forgive me, I forgot to write down his name, with the Mosquito Control Board or one of the districts. And he said that the legislation, the intent of this legislation was actually for communities in Western Massachusetts that have the type of vector mosquitoes that are of concern, but do not have a mosquito control district that they can participate in at the moment. So whereas Gloucester and the North Shore communities do. So he also brought up the fact that in Gloucester, it's the type of mosquito that we commonly have to deal with is salt marsh mosquitoes are typically not vectors for Triple E or West Nile virus. It's not to say that those types of mosquitoes don't exist, they're not that as prevalent. However, there obviously have been issues. I think there was a Triple E case nearby or West Nile virus case nearby in Essex several years ago. And whether or not that person had contracted it out of town, I don't know, was ever discovered. Anyway, so the end result of all this is, and of course I want Deborah to speak to this from her perspective, is that nothing much has changed on our side. The legislation doesn't really do what we would care for it to do, which is just be able to have testing done in Gloucester in order to be able to advise residents and visitors as to whether or not there is an issue in those neighborhoods, in those areas. So, again, if the city chooses to participate in the mosquito control district, it's a city council process. There's a 3-year requirement for joining the mosquito control district. The cost is associated with what's called the cherry sheet evaluation for the city, which is based on land size for the city. And the last time we looked into this, which was somebody helping us probably about 3-4+ years ago,
Yeah, please.
it was close to $80,000 per year. So it's $240,000 roughly. The city council understood the concern, but kind of balked at it and it was moved on. So Deborah, you want to take a moment to talk about this from your side?
Deborah,
Okay.
before you get started, please introduce yourself with name and
Oh,
address.
sorry.
Record.
Well, sure. My name is Deborah Kramer. For those of you who don't know me, I live at 318 Concord Street in West Gloucester. And I guess the first thing I want to do is say that maybe I owe you guys a huge apology. The conversation that I had with Bill, the executive director of the Northeast Mosquito Control District, I think wetlands and mosquito management, was sort of different from the conversation that Max had when I gave him Max's, I sent an email to the two of them. The first thing is that I never understood that legislation to be anything that would get us tested this year. What I understood that legislation to be is a evaluation of mosquito control programs in Massachusetts with the opportunity to, as Bill described it to me, to have an effect on how decisions are made about the assessments for particular towns and cities to join. The way the assessment goes right now, it's based on your total square miles rather than the amount of wetlands that you have. So Gloucester being the second largest geographic-wise city in the state, our assessment is the highest, but the proportion of wetlands that we have in our geographic area is considerably lower. So this assessment isn't really fair for us. So a town like Rowley, for example, which is all wetlands, I think they only pay $5,000 a year. So it's, the disparities and the inequities in this, the way the formula is based, are huge. And what he had been suggesting to me was that this legislation, which has set up some task force, which is going to get input from communities all over the state, was an opportunity for us to state that this isn't fair to us. Now, it's possible, Max, that in fact, that isn't what this is about. And the first meeting was on August 14th. I don't have the minutes of that meeting. I can't even figure out who's convening it. And I don't know whether you tried to do that or not. And I don't know what the best mechanism is of doing that. I can certainly, if you were unable to figure out who's chairing the meeting and what happened at that first meeting, I can certainly try to call Ann Margaret and see if I can figure it out, because there is a reason for Gloucester to be treated more fairly in this entire process. There isn't a reason for you guys to invest a lot of time in that at this moment, because there's so many other pressures on everybody. So the only thing is, if it is a real opportunity to get some change in the future, it's worth participating in. But I guess maybe what I should try to do is, Max, if you didn't find out anything about this committee, I can try to do that and not take up any of your time if I can't even identify who's chairing it and what it's doing. So that was the first thing. Then the second thing he said to me was, if you, while all that is going on, there may be opportunities for the lab at Jamaica Plain to test mosquitoes for Triple E, because the problem, as you know, if you join the mosquito control district, then you're paying for a lot of services that you might not necessarily avail yourself of. I mean, I'm sure you saw the wild and woolly conversation that emerged about all of this. Nobody who I've spoke to about this is even asking for any spraying or anything like that. We just wanted to know what the risk was. And the reason we wanted to know what the risk was is because the case last year, which was a fatality, was in Essex. He was from Essex. The question was whether he contracted the disease in Essex or he contracted it in Manchester. And there were mosquitoes that were testing positive in all of the surrounding towns, Hamilton and all, and with Essex not being in the, if Essex was in this mosquito control district, then we could basically just go with whatever the situation is in Essex, because we're all in the same watershed here. And because the fatality is 50% and 80% of the people who survive have severe neurological damage afterwards, we just wanted to find out what the risk was. Now, I was also unable to reach anybody at the state lab at Jamaica Plain. I don't know, Max, if you tried to do that, but so I don't have an answer on who's chairing the committee, when it's meeting, that is for the long-term question, or the short-term question about whether anybody can test these mosquitoes now. Now, as long as nothing's showing up in Hamilton, which I think is the nearest town to us, or Manchester, as long as nothing is showing up there, then we don't really, I mean, this is a little sloppy, right? But as long as nothing's showing up there, then we really maybe don't need to worry about that in the immediate term. What do you guys think? I mean,
I'm trying to think. In regards to the legislation itself and who's on the committee and such, I don't even know if that's been chosen yet, because the latest drafts were early August, if I remember correctly, and that was just determining what positions would be, or excuse me, where people would be drawn from, what sectors, whether it's government or it's conservation groups or farming groups, what have you, who would be on that committee. Whether or not those people were actually chosen and that committee actually formed, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't figure this out. And I don't, other than Ann Margaret or trying to call Catherine Brown, which I feel like we're in the midst of another huge health emergency here. I don't want to waste Catherine Brown's time asking her about this. So I don't know, other than talking to Ann Margaret, what the best way is of even finding the answer to the question.
Yeah, that's probably about where you could go. And whether or not whether or not the city could do its own sampling or take samples and send them to Jamaica Plain is another question. I remember we explored this early on, and I didn't get much of a positive response from DPH on that. So
We're not interested.
yeah, well, it was more that the companies that we would have to hire in order to be able to do this weren't, they are specifically just looking at, working directly with the mosquito control district.
And weren't they
folks
from New
themselves.
Hampshire?
I'm sorry?
Weren't they from New Hampshire?
Correct. And there were
I remember.
there's plenty of others around, but yes, the ones I
Yeah.
think we were looking at the time were in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
and they just wouldn't recognize the protocol that they were
That's right.
using at all.
That's right.
So it's basically all or nothing. You either use the mosquito control district, at least Deborah, that's what we were told at the time.
Right.
The mosquito control district will use, if they do the sampling, but you have to join them for them to do the sampling, and it became a cascading.
So the DPH was telling you that, the Jamaica lab was telling you
At
that also.
that time, which was, I don't know, Karen, 3+ years ago or so. So, yeah.
Okay, so then basically, rather than waste any more time on this, the best thing probably is for me to see if I can persuade Ann Margaret to look into the establishment of this committee. And then if these mosquitoes start testing positive in Hamilton and Manchester, for those of us who live in this area, which is full of freshwater wetlands. I mean, it is definitely true that the issue here is freshwater wetlands, not the salt marsh mosquito.
Yeah.
We'll just assume that it's a risk and behave accordingly. Unless anybody has anything else to contribute to this.
That's essentially what we've done in the past, and the city's taken strides when, in the cases in Manchester, Essex, for instance, when they were tested that close, I mean, they did close down ball fields and a few other things for dusk to dawn sort of curfews in those play areas, just in getting the word out to the public as best as possible to personal protection, always the best, et cetera, dump out any fresh water that you may have standing on the property, all the usual things. Obviously with COVID this year, a lot of that typical public health work has kind of gone off to the corner,
Right.
but it doesn't mean it's not
Right.
important.
Right, so,
I was just gonna say, I do think it might make sense to ask Ann Margaret about, when this committee does form, to look into the idea of the formula that they're using of square miles is adverse to Gloucester, and that maybe there's another way that they could look at it.
I think that's,
and I don't think that would be unrealistic to think.
I think there's two pieces to that, Claudia. One, the formula, and also, why do you have to purchase the entire thing? Why can't we just have an a la carte menu here?
Right.
Agreed.
Because
That's what we said 4 years ago.
And they wouldn't listen.
And they wouldn't
Yeah.
listen.
Oh, Deborah, this is all in a note somewhere in my drawer.
I know, that's why I know this, as I was just thinking though, that this legislation did
That's
give
what's so infuriating about this.
us an opportunity to beat our heads against the wall again, so.
Okay. And I think the idea of looking at changing how, they view it, and instead of by square footage, by the amount of wetlands, might be an argument that they could listen to.
No,
Okay.
yes.
Well, so I'll try to, I can see where this is going to go, but I will get in touch with Ann Margaret, and I'll get in touch with Bruce and see if they can determine where this is. And I will not be before you again unless there's something mildly constructive.
Thank you, Deborah.
Well, thank you for even bringing the.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. This is like,
No. This needs to be revisited, if only to find out that nothing has changed.
well, Fred, this is like it. It's all like Sisyphus. We just keep rolling the rock up and down the hill. So
I think Claudia's got a point. So.
have a lovely evening, you guys, and thank you
You
so
too.
very much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, flu vaccinations for seniors.
Yeah.
We'll put that on the agenda.
Must have been Karen's idea.
No one claims it.
I don't know how it got, it's not actually on my agenda, but I'm happy to talk about it. We are doing lots of planning for flu clinics. We have a phased approach, phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 is the only seniors that will be offering, we'll be providing the vaccine to will be those living in Gloucester Housing Authority senior facilities. So at this point, we cannot, we don't have the guidance, the logistics, or anything to operate a drive-through, basically a drive-through flu clinic. But we are exploring it, and when we get to phase 2, we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, we've been speaking with our private partners, CVS and Walgreens, and asking them, they have programs set up so agencies and businesses can offer flu vaccine and clinics on site for their employees and their clients. They just have to have a minimum of 20 people interested. So at this point, we're doing the senior housing, we're doing all the school community, so that's staff and students. And we are doing the, what else, Max, did I miss? I don't know, there's one other. Action Shelter, our immediate high-risk vulnerable populations. I think that's it initially. And then in phase 2, once we get these school kids caught up, because as you know, DPH made that a requirement about a week ago that all school-age children have the flu vaccine this year to help mitigate the number of sick people heading into hospitals and whatnot with flu as well as COVID. So that's kind of where we're at. We expect there'll be a big demand from the schools, and we'll be starting that in September.
Karen, did you want to speak to the partnerships between CVS and Walgreens and some of the corporations maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to them at length to see how we could partner, because we knew this year with Kelly Reese, who normally runs these clinics, on maternity leave, so we didn't have our normal staff. We also don't have the ability to set up clinics. We don't have guidance on that because of the COVID regs. So we were concerned, and it was interesting, many people would not go ahead and organize things when CVS approached them until we kind of blessed it. The Board of Health said, yes, this is a good partnership. It's important to get your flu shot. And, they were sort of waiting for us. So that's nice. They see us as important players in this and look to us for guidance. And so we've now disseminated the information. There are contact people at both of those pharmacies who specifically their job is to set up clinics, and they will come to any site where there's 20 or more people signed up. And they'll bill, and we have nothing to do with it, which is great this year. That's it.
So I was thinking, another thing is, I've already gotten an email from my doctor's group saying that they're offering, the flu vaccine, but usually I like getting it at the health department because I'm on the board, and it just feels good to do that. And so that was, of course, my first thought, but now that you're saying that, I will go and get it at my doctor's office, and you might want to have something in the paper.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are putting out a flyer. They're working on it now. Yeah, about exactly what the clinics are and what the options are for people. The other group we are providing vaccines for, I've remembered, is essential employees for the city. So as volunteers to the city, I'm certain you'll be eligible for that. And when we have those dates, we'll let you know that as well.
Okay. But I do think, because, who knows, it might be a real run on it, but for people to know early that if their doctors are offering it, they should just go and get it.
Yeah. What do you imagine as being the start date for phase 2?
I think it depends on a few things. It depends on the vaccine and how our nurses, we have 2 nurses who are new at this, kind of running the whole thing. I think it depends too where we're at with COVID. If things are really quiet like they are right now, we can safely bring 25 people or 20 people into an area and keep them spaced and move them through a lobby or the senior center,
Yeah.
a few at a time.
Yeah.
In a line. If COVID, if we're at the point in which we're starting to shut down in a month or 6 weeks and there's a lot of transmission, this is exactly the group we do not want to be bringing out into confined indoor areas.
Exactly.
So between our volunteers, who are, many of them are in the high risk group, who help us, and then the actual seniors themselves, will need to be very careful. But if we have capacity in a month and we're still at this very low level of transmission, I'm really comfortable going ahead with clinics in which we stage people coming through an area. It might even be an outdoor tent or a drive-through. So there's a few people, the hospital is talking about partnering with us as well. So I think it's quite possible, but I think we need to let the schools get started and these 2 new staff kind of find their feet and do it the first time. And
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
Want to just mention that I got mine out at CVS at Gloucester Crossing. They had plenty. They also have the shingles vaccine.
Oh, wow.
Wow,
And I think they're limited to people 65 and older.
for the shingles.
The shingles, right, if you haven't had it. So, and any other comments about this? Then I'll fess up and say, it turned out I was the one that wanted to have this on the agenda. I just forgot. Okay, moving on. A discussion about 5G and health impacts.
So this came to the board of, just one moment, please, Ms. Doucette. So this came to the board through Councilor Gilman, through the mayor's office, who had asked that we have, kind of look into whether or not 5G, which is a cell phone technology, transmission technology, it's being proposed in the community, whether or not there are any known health impacts. The department did the best we could in order to come up with some information about it. There are articles from the New York Times, the BBC. I did some research with the American Cancer Society and World Health Organization. And just by way of background, from what I'm reading to help me understand, so people are accustomed to seeing the large cell phone towers around where the 5G, what they're doing, instead of using large cell towers, they're using much smaller units, transmission units that are set much lower, usually put on telephone poles and that sort of thing, and provide better, faster coverage. How it does that is by using a higher frequency radio wave, higher frequency wave, forgive me. But it travels a shorter distance. So where the larger towers will transmit over great distances, even though it's a lower frequency, it's a greater distance. The reason why you're able to get a cell phone inside of a building is because of the larger cell phone towers. With the 5G technology, from everything that I'm reading, what they're saying is that it actually wouldn't penetrate a building, and if there's a lot of leaf cover, it wouldn't even go through the leaves. So that's why they're putting them in kind of urban areas and in neighborhoods and closer together. Pardon me as I read my notes here. Let's see. Based on what I'm reading, there's inconclusive evidence, the World Health Organization had said, as to whether or not there are any health impacts due to this. Because of even though it's a higher frequency, it's a much lower intensity than the low frequency cell phone transmission waves that we're used to, which connect, if you were close enough, long enough, may have a possible concern, carcinogenic concern. There was a study that was done, but one of the things they brought up was they exposed rats to that higher frequency, it's considered a non-ionizing radiation, but in that study, they exposed the rats to radiation for 9 hours every day, day after day for 2 years. And the male rats developed a heart cancer over time, but the female rats had no impacts and the mice had no impacts, so no knowing on that. They're saying that non-ionizing, that type of non-ionizing radiation, pardon me, lacks a sufficient power essentially to break through the skin and harm DNA. So it's not even strong enough to really do any actual physical damage at the levels that they're talking about. They're saying that visible light radiation is actually even stronger than that. So there will be a greater number of transmitters because of the lower distance that's permitted, but it allows people, lower radiation than the 4G. It's actually a lower level of radiation than the current 4G technology. And that's pretty much what I've been able to find. It's basically everybody says the same thing, which is things are inconclusive. We really haven't, it's obviously not used enough at this point to have any overt concerns, but the type of frequency that it's at, there shouldn't be any particular issues. So that's what I've been able to come up with in a short amount of time.
So what's the advantage of switching to this?
So it allows a greater number of people to use a frequency at a faster rate. So the information, how long it takes some things to download from the internet and that sort of thing on a cell phone. So cell phone. So this would make things a lot faster.
I've read 20, 25 times faster.
Oh, okay.
It also, Max, it's actually a low frequency, not a high frequency.
And will it improve cell phone performance?
Yes,
In addition to downloading on the computer?
yes.
Okay.
The study that Max was referring to, the male rats that had this problem was only a certain age group. It wasn't all of them. And a lot of people feel that it was just a statistical anomaly. So that was a hell of an exposure. One thing that is brought up frequently, let me just find it here, is that the IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, classifies this as a group 2B, which is possible carcinogenic to humans. And what that means is there is some evidence that it can cause cancer in humans, but at present it is far from conclusive. And you want to understand many of the other items that are in this 2B category. It includes aloe vera, pickled vegetables, coffee, wine, turmeric, all these various things that contain caffeic, CAFFEIC acid, which is not related to caffeine, surprisingly enough. So that it's a very wide group, and it does not really mean a whole lot. There's two other groups that are much more specific. As Max said, it does not, non-ionizing radiation doesn't carry enough energy to break apart DNA. And from what I read, it can cause a very, very slight, imperceptible increase in skin temperature, but that's about all.
Are we being asked for an opinion?
That's what I was just going to say. Are they looking for us to, yeah?
Well, they,
Al was
meaning
asking for
Counselor,
something.
Counselor Gilman is looking for an opinion. I haven't heard that the full city council or any of the subcommittees are asking for this information. It's just her herself.
Well, I sure as hell don't know enough.
And as an aside, I read where the New York Times published an article, and they noted that Russian the Russian propaganda network RT America has been at the forefront of running stories about the harm from 5G.
Just so you know, Mr. Chairman, a CC Doucette has raised her hand to speak. This isn't a public hearing. It's in discussion for the board members. It's up to you if you want to give her provide her an opportunity to speak.
Well, I believe in letting people speak, so we can allot 5 minutes to her.
Okay.
Will you time this?
Okay,
Matt?
Ms. Doucette, you're all set?
Thank you very much. Am I able to turn my camera on?
That's up to you.
Okay. I don't seem to have controls for camera. I just see microphone.
We hear you.
Okay. Alrighty. So thank you for allowing me 5 minutes to speak. My name is CC Doucette, and I'm actually from Ashland. And a few years back, I didn't really know anything about wireless technology either. I had spent 8 years bringing wireless into our public schools because we kept hearing about the 21st century classroom and how our children were going to need all this new equipment to succeed. So we did fundraising for wireless infrastructure, for iPads, Chromebooks, smart boards, and so on. And then one night at book group, a girlfriend of mine who's an electrical engineer tipped us off that there could be biological impact. So that's where my journey in investigating wireless technology came into play. And what I did is, I think pretty much what you gentlemen have done as well, an initial search to pretty much say, is Wi-Fi safe? And what I found were studies that showed there was no harm. And later on, I learned that those were by and large industry-funded studies done under short-term conditions that would indeed show no harm. But I'm a technical and professional writer by trade, so doing research is part of my skill set. So I dug just a little bit deeper, and then I was astounded to find literally thousands of studies, peer-reviewed, published all over the world, linking radio frequency radiation, non-ionizing, non-thermal, low-level radio frequency to not only child and adult cancers, but to DNA damage. You're correct that it does not break the atom, but there is harm happening through other mechanisms. It is also linked in the scientific literature to cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, autism, infertility, and you may know, being a board of health, that we are down 50% as a nation on our sperm count right now. And it was actually the sperm studies that got me on my feet. I actually pulled up the peer-reviewed science and started reading it myself. They've taken male human sperm and exposed it to a laptop with the antennas turned on, and it changed the DNA. It slowed the motility of the sperm, and it caused far fewer sperm to be viable in just 4 hours of laptop exposure. So that was the day that I got busy and began pulling information together. And then I began speaking to our schools about it. And I know I've only got a couple of minutes, but information that would be very helpful for you to know is that the World Health Organization in 2020 has reopened their investigation into radio frequency effects. They are calling out cancers, DNA damage, and a host of microwave sickness symptoms that many people experience today and would never even think to connect the dots to their own wireless exposures inside their house, let alone what's going up with our infrastructure through macro cell antennas. Those are the big ones. And the distributed antenna systems are the small cells that the industry is now trying to put at the curb outside of our homes, every 2 to 12 houses, so they can spin up 5G and the Internet of Things. And then there's also the issue of the utility smart meters that we're kind of being encouraged to switch over to take our mechanical analog water, gas, and electric meters and convert those over to digital meters. Well, those transmit this radio frequency many times a minute, all day and all night. And oftentimes, many people become ill when those get mounted on the wall outside of where they sleep. So I know for many of you, this may be coming out of left field, but I highly encourage you to do the deeper dive. When you talk about the study that you referenced with the rats, that is the largest study our US National Toxicology Program has ever done. It was a $30 million study conducted over 2 decades. They had an unprecedented 3-day peer review at the NIH with experts who specialize in microwave radiation or radio frequency. And at the end of that 3-day peer review, in their final report, they declared clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage. And as a health board, you may know that clear evidence is the highest public warning that can be assigned. So be very careful where you get your information from. When I was investigating, I thought, surely if this is as bad as the peer-reviewed science shows it to be that I'm finding, somebody must have our backs on this. And it wasn't until 2015 that Harvard's Law School Center for Ethics put out an excellent report called Captured Agency, how the Federal Communications Commission is dominated by the industries it presumably regulates. And today the FCC is headed up by Ajit Pai, who's a former senior lawyer with Verizon. His predecessor, Tom Wheeler, was the head of the Cellular Telephone Industry Association, and prior to that, the head of the Cable Association. So we do have some conflicts of interest at the federal level, and the FCC, by our own Senator Ed Markey, was asked through the Government Accountability Office at the federal level to open up a docket and get comments in from the public on this back in 2013. They just closed that docket 6 years later on December 17th of last year. And instead of investigating the peer-reviewed published literature, they just basically said, we're going to continue doing what we've always done.
Your time, unfortunately, is over. Thank you for your comments. I have learned through issues that have come up that it's important to look at the original documents. So if you have references or can provide copies of the studies that you referenced, that would be very helpful.
Sure.
You could get those to Max and he will disseminate them to the group.
Okay. I have introduced legislation with Senate President Karen Spilka. There are 3 bills advancing right now, and I also called a meeting with Health and Human Services Secretary Mary Lou Sutters and her staff. And we had a 1-page follow-up that I sent to them, and I'd be honored to send that over to you. It has links to the science. Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
All right. And I do present to municipalities throughout the country.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to stop. We have other items on the agenda now.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Max, who wishes to speak?
No, Mr. Sat was the only person who had their hands
Okay,
up.
I want to mention that we did receive an email with a statement from Karen Favazza Spencer, but following our normal procedure, we don't look at or discuss things that are presented in writing to us at the board meeting. So that's something that you probably will all see in your box, and we can decide if we wish to comment on it at the next meeting.
Fine.
Moving on.
Well, are we?
I'm sorry. Anyone else from the board wish to speak?
Well, I guess I guess I would like to at least explore further what this woman is presenting. And are we being asked currently to make a recommendation to Val Gilman or, the mayor? Because I guess based on that, I don't feel ready to say, yeah, that'd be great, or no, it wouldn't. I feel like we need I need more information.
I don't think we're ready to make a recommendation.
What's that?
I do not feel that we're ready to make a recommendation at this point.
Yeah.
I think that we need to do some reading, do some looking.
I feel that way as well.
Forgive me, I don't know if you want to take this. We do have one other person with a hand up.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead, please. This is the person with the phone number ending in 4682.
There we
Thank you all. This is Val Gilman, and I appreciate you taking this up. I thought I could explain a little bit more what my motive was to bring this forward. We had two issues on the that are coming forward in Gloucester. One was for a poll petition at the corner of Salt Island Road. And initially it was with AT&T. They were going to begin with 4G and increasing it to 5G. And we had an outpouring of folks that attended our poll petition public hearing from Briar Neck, about 10 abutters. And they were very concerned. Some of these, the box was going to be within 30 to 40 feet from where folks were sleeping, actually in that condominium at the corner of Salt Island Road and Whittam Street. So our representative from AT&T that was bringing this forward and working closely with Greg Catamatori, they ended up going back to AT&T and trying to figure out if there was another spot that wasn't so close to people's bedrooms. So that was our first event. And at that point, I had brought this forward to Karen and to Dr. Segal just to bring it forward, and they had offered to bring it forward, and we thought, maybe not. But more recently, because they found another place, but more recently, there's a water tower bid, which is a water tower next to Plum Cove School. And one of my constituents in Ward 4 had brought this to my attention, and I spoke to John Dunn about it. And in fact, they were accepting bids as of August 25th. And when you read into the bids on the city website, they were actually, this would consider 5G enhancements in the future. And I don't know where this stands right now, but that's a water tower that's probably 100 yards, 50 to 100 yards from Plum Cove School on Hickory Street. So it's kind of those two events overall. And I would say, having heard your conversation, Barry Pett and Jen Holgram were also concerned about 5G, as was Scott Memard, who is the ward counselor. So I was grateful that Vanessa offered to bring this forward, because when multiple constituents are asking throughout the city, and there are two different things happening that could bring this technology in, I just thought it was perfect to bring it forward to our subject matter experts, which is all of you, because I'm not an expert, and I much prefer to deal with facts and not what people are thinking, so that's why I wanted to escalate it. So I just wanted to speak and thank you for bringing this forward. And if you have any further questions, feel free to give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And as you know, I live very close to the Plum Cove School, so my concern just.
This is Claudia. Yeah, you can talk to John Dunn, and you can actually see the bid on, it's on the website. So, yeah. So Greg's aware too. Greg thought it wouldn't be a bad thing to just get the conversation going. So thank you. Thank you all for everything you do. I so much appreciate it.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you. I see the mayor has joined our group. Do you wish to join us to say anything, comments?
I just wanted to thank everyone. It's not easy being in your position. I've been on a lot of Zooms with the Board of Health, the Secretary, Sutters, and I just wanted to let you know I appreciate all of you. And I just wanted to say that a big shout out, because we're going around. I was, shouting out to city clerk, because they did an amazing job this, this election, this primary. They're still working really hard. I've said it for my DPW, but I just wanted to let you know what Karen Carroll and Max has been going through. You have absolutely no idea. We are so ahead of the ball game that I talk to mayors, and they're still looking at You know, I'm talking about what am I going to do about my shelters come October, because, you know, the weather's getting cold. We have action waiting for already, you know, 30 people now, and it's not even cold. What are we going to do? I mean, I'm not worried about my seniors because, you know, the Housing Authority already knows what to do in case we have to do anything, you know, so doesn't senior care. So we're already in play, Julie LaFontaine, all of that. But where we're going to put our, you know, our homeless, most vulnerable, and then working with the schools, you know, some of the Riverdale, it's called Veterans Way now, Riverdale Park. Some of those who don't even have vehicles to go to work, never mind to go to school, they said a statement that within 2 miles that you're going to have to get your own transportation. So you're looking at 25 families there that are not going to be able to go to school, and they want to go use a community center to do a homeschool. And I said, you can't do that. We need these kids in school. They need to go to school. What about their breakfast? What about their lunch? I mean, you can't do that. And, you know, have one person who's not a tutor to do that. And so I'm working with the Housing Authority. In the meantime, our little Miss Muffet there, who I called Karen in my pocket. And when Karen in my pocket was gone, it was Max in my pocket. Because every time it's like, you know, it's just like pop right up. Karen, Max, Karen, Max, Karen, Max. I don't know who was on vacation, but they answered no matter where they were. And what can we do, and how are we going to do this, and you know, what's the criteria, and okay, send me the letter for action, so that we're sending the governor. I mean, there's so many different emails going on. And last night with the school committee, they expected so much. And some of the other Board of Health were saying, okay, so is it the burden of the Board of Directors that should be doing some of these things, or is it the, you know, the administration? And they said, well, the administration should be working with the school committee and have naturally the Board of Health is there also because it's the one who directs also our Board of Health administration. We all work together. Well, I think they think that, you know, my little Max in pocket, Karen in pocket are for them. They don't know it was just my personal pockets. And because it's driving them crazy and they expect all these things. So I just want to let you know that I might have to call upon you to say, look, you know what, we need to all pitch in. We need to all say to the school committee, you know, give us some things to do. You know, they're working on, you know, the next step, you know, and so I really appreciate all of you, you know, that are on here, that are on the board. It's like I said, it's absolutely not easy at all. It didn't come with the book. We're all learning. We all have to find out what this MAVE is and what that is, and all these initials, CSD, DSA. But I'm learning the alphabet all over again. But I just wanted to let you know, a big shout out to Max and Karen and their team, because not only do they acknowledge their team, which we should, you know, and their employees, and but I really appreciate them, because I truthfully, I'm a pain in the ass. Okay. I truthfully have been. I mean, it's crazy. And it's not easy. We're trying to figure out what's the opening, what's not the opening. It's scary because the lives of all these people are on our shoulders. You know, I joke around and I say that, but it's scary. It petrifies me. I mean, I have friends now who are no longer my friends because, you know, why can't I do this? Why can't I have this event? Because, you know, you want to involve children and they're going to go to school and they're going to, it's, you don't understand, you know, there were so many people who still don't believe it. And so many people who think that whoever on Pennsylvania Ave, I don't want to say his name, is going to, you know, cure the world. And we're dealing with that. So it's scary. And I am so grateful that I have Max and Karen in my pockets. And I wish I could pay them in my pockets, but I don't have that. But I just want to let you guys know that after this is all over, Max and Karen are going away. I'm taking them somewhere far away. No Wi-Fi, no, you know, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. Even though she went biking in Maine,
No
and she
5G.
didn't find me.
No
You know?
5G, yes.
Yeah. And so we might have to call upon you all to help us out to
Yep.
make sure we have Karen and Max's back.
Available.
So I just wanted to say, I thank you all. I know it's hard, but I'm going to be dependent on you a little bit more because I think this winter is going to be a little bit more hard for us. So what I want to see if you could do this. As your Board of Health Directors, as you understand, if you can get some information and then take a vote or whatever to write a letter to the governor saying, you know what, we are concerned. We're very concerned that there's no more, you know, what do they call it? Testing for our homeless and our most vulnerable. And we don't have $4,000 a week to do that. And if they had to shut down or go into a shelter, they can't unless, you know, they quarantine for 2 weeks and they're not going to be able to, or they've had the, you know, the testing, which they're not going to be able to. And if you're not going to regionalize, we need to figure out where we can go. If there's a place we need to look for in Gloucester, that maybe if we had the funding that we could produce and put into maybe, like Brad Pearson said that he used to do that before, but he might not want to now with COVID. So we have to look at that. A lot of places they say, oh yeah, we'll help you. But when they hear who you want to put, where you want to put them, they back off. And so I'm going to need your strength of the Board of Health to write a letter and saying on behalf of the city of Gloucester, this is the Board of Health. These are our concerns. These are our issues, and we can't always put the burden, on our administration. We need to do something. And we're asking the governor to take charge and find something for our homeless, because that's who's going to be more affected. I'm not worried so much as my seniors. We got to, we're all taking care of all of that. The same thing with Julie. We'll get the food. We'll make sure children get food and everything else. But if we don't know where they are and we can't put them anywhere and there's a limited number, then we're looking at, 40, 50 people just walking around in the streets this winter. And that scares me.
In New York City, that's what they're doing. It's back to when I lived there. They called them welfare hotels. Then they became, the homeless were all gone. Then they were fancy hotels. And now that no one's coming to New York as tourists, they're putting all the homeless people in the hotels in New York. So,
well, we need to figure that out. We have someone here that maybe would willing, Brad. I don't know if, the, whatever it's called there at Long Beach. I don't, a lot of them don't want to talk about it. When I talked to the chambers today, they say, well, Mayor, we're worried. No, you need to worry about, because come when it gets cold, you guys are not gonna be able to go outside. And then you're going to start bitching at me saying, well, why can't I have more than so many people in my restaurant? So I just want you to be prepared that, I wish I could say, hey, it's over, but it's not. I'm going to ask the board, you're going to have to step up a little bit. And I know you're all willing to. And I know we kept you aside, but we're going to have to stand together like strong arms. And we're going to have to, it'll be us at the Rotary saying, you know what, our lives matter, get away. I'm going to have to put the bridge up and everything else and not let anyone in, because it's going to be us against them, because everyone's just watching out, and we have to figure out now. We have to get a plan in place, because if we don't shut down, because I don't know what that's going to happen, then we don't have access to the Y. And that was perfect. So where do we put them?
Right.
And they're my residents. They're not homeless. They're my residents. They're residents of the city of Gloucester. So it's my responsibility. And so Max in a pocket and Karen in a pocket going to keep caring for me unless you help. So I have to go off to ZBA meeting. So I want to just say thank you and think about that and see if we can get together again.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, everyone,
Yeah.
and have a good night.
Joining us.
Thanks.
Sorry
Good
to
night.
keep being today I'm Debbie Doomer everywhere I go. So, but thank you very much, everyone.
okay, we know how wonderful Max and Karen are, so.
Yep.
Yes,
My
we
pockets,
do.
leave them alone. Bye-bye.
Good night, Mayor. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, she's funny. So that's a good, well, you can segue into are we ready for my report, Rich?
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this? Anyone else on the board that wishes to speak on it?
What are we talking about now? What the mayor just
We're
said?
talking about 5G, actually.
Well, just that we need more information.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. why don't we
my
move
interest
on
is eight.
to,
I'm
Karen's
just- and
report?
I will read stuff that is sent to me, but I'm in Claudia's court. There's no way to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Rich, I want to remind you, please, we have some minutes that need to be approved.
Well, that's true. How'd we skip that? I lost the agenda, it disappeared on me. But anyway, we have the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there
I
any,
make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second,
all in favor? Any questions, comments, changes? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any
Supposed to be a
opposed?
roll call vote, sorry.
That's minutes of August the 6th.
August 6th, correct.
Okay, are there any other minutes to be approved?
No.
No.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the department report.
Well, I'll just give the COVID update quickly because I think the rest is in there. And most of the team has been redeployed in one way or another their work has been shifted into COVID stuff. We had a team meeting, I think yesterday, Max, with the group. And it was great. I'll type up a summary. I think it would be great, and I think we can share it with the mayor too, so that she's aware and everyone's aware of the different things that are happening within the department that are also helping with the COVID response. So our dental center is going to open back up in a couple of weeks in a limited way. So we're very excited about that. And hopefully as the year goes on, if the schools stay open, they'll transition to doing some work on site in the schools as they had planned to last spring. The Mass in Motion folks are working with the Seniors on the Go and our new senior director, Elise, to provide produce. They did a drive-through pickup for seniors. So there's some great initiatives. Rosalie is working with us on those. But just in terms of COVID right now, as I said earlier, we're in a really quiet time of very, very low community transmission. We have 3 active cases at the moment. Our hospitals are reporting being in good shape. The trend statewide for hospital admissions, deaths, and positivity rate for tests have all gone very, very low. We haven't seen these rates this low in a long time. So that is good. There are some indicators that are a little confusing in metrics, like, for example, the map that the school is using, DESE is using, is turned to green last week, and that's a calculation of incidence based on population. So we just happened to hit that magic number of 8 or 7 or something above 5, and it causes a lot of angst though, and we got a lot of questions, and Max and Carol got a lot of concerns last week as the school committee's trying to open, and then this map changes color, and DESE has put so much emphasis on it. So we're trying to help people understand what that map is, and that we're going to look at it in conjunction with all these other indicators in the community, including the wastewater sampling, which we now have 3 or 4 weeks of, and we're bouncing right around that not detected, slightly above detected level. So we were up a little and then kind of, came down again last week. So we don't have any upward trends. We're kind of establishing a baseline, which is roughly what we would expect given we have very few cases in town. We've been asked to share that information publicly. So as Max knows, it's really technical. Their 2-page report, and it does your head in. So Vanessa, our data person, is helping us just kind of take one of the graphs that shows the trend over time of the virus level in the wastewater and label it more clearly, and then we'll put it in our weekly reports through the website and the mayor's report. So those are the main things we're watching, continue to watch and talk to our partners. The main areas of concern right now are kind of the same ones we've had. Testing, we still don't have testing on Cape Ann. The testing the turnaround time is pretty good right now, so we got that going for us. We are, as of last week, we no longer test our homeless shelter once a week. So as the mayor mentioned, that would cost about $4,000 a week to do, and at this point, the funds are not available. But it's something we might like to continue to do if we could find a way to do that. And the other big issue with the homeless population is the fact that we have 30 people on a waiting list. And again, this is obviously something you heard the mayor talk about, and she loses sleep over. The emergency preparedness folks and emergency manager are meeting with Action and trying to look at alternatives, but it's really difficult. There kind of aren't a lot. So the state, we also keep pushing this to the state to say, what is your plan? How are you helping us? Because we're just one town, but really all of these communities have waiting lists. Their shelters had to go to half population for the COVID requirements, half capacity. So they're kind of starting the winter already with a waiting list, which is not good. And yeah, I think those are our main issues. We have lots of food, but we are seeing the request for SNAP benefits and food is continuing to rise, and we imagine that it will through the fall and winter. The schools are trying desperately to open, and we are in support of that at this point while there's low transmission, but they're grappling with all of the logistics, 3 feet, 6 feet, masks, and little kids, and again, do your head in. So they're really staying with it, though. It's an amazing school committee, teachers, principals, everybody is just keeps meeting and working on it, and needing a lot of support from us, but our team is providing that because we think that's a really high priority right now. And also looking at other alternatives after school, when kids are not in school, what kinds of programs. So we sit on committees, our prevention team does, and trying to help support those efforts best we can. I think those are some of the main issues. I mean, most of the industries are open and things are going pretty well right now. So Max, I mean, do you have any other areas of concern or right now, or things you're noticing from your team?
Not in particular. I mean, I think you're right. It's gotten to a certain status quo in terms of department response and the number of complaints we get. Again, I've said this earlier, but a shout out to Brian Muehlman, our food inspector, who's really been doing yeoman's work with working with the restaurants, trying to keep them open, trying to help interpret, we're working with them to help interpret the multitude of rules and regulations that come through from the state as to what you can and can't do. And it's for special events, it's for a lot of, well, if you can have an event, gatherings and such. So it takes a lot of time because a lot of times when these things come out from the state, we get near zero notice, and we don't get any advance documentation, so we know what's going on ahead of time, so we can be aware. So when the public knows, we know, and then the public calls us expecting answers, and we're trying to figure it out for ourselves. So it's been difficult in that regard, but I think all in all, you know, much to Karen's credit and the mayor's support, I think this community has probably been more prepared than most and more effective than most in response.
Yeah. The question I have, where do teachers go for their masks? Are they responsible for their own?
I think so. I think the kids and the teachers are expected to have their own face coverings. But I can double check for you if I know that schools will have a supply in case a kid forgets it. They're not going to send them home. But I mean, they haven't made any requests through us or the task force or the state supply pipeline for massive amounts of face coverings or any of that. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a question about when we discussed the school reopening, we talked about supporting the DPH guidelines, not the DESE guidelines. And then I wasn't sure if I heard you say something about the DESE guidelines.
Yep, you are correct on all of that. The DPH had guidelines, and DPH referred to, they, basically said for schools, DESE will take the lead, so follow what DESE says. But then DESE came out with some things that were in direct contradiction that like around quarantining requirements. So it would have been virtually impossible for our nurses to, say, okay, you're a teacher, so you can go back to school, but you're, max, and you have to stay home 14 days. So it didn't make sense. So we asked them, virtually everyone in the state said, you've got to get these on the same page. And they did. So about 2 weeks ago, the guidance came back pretty much standardized. So they are the same on those critical issues. So now we do go back to referring to DESE. But towns can go beyond DESE's, the guidelines for the schools. And, our school committee is looking at going a little beyond that with some of the mask rules. But, we
3 feet or 6 feet or.
Mm-hmm. They've standardized most of that. It's a little gray. They kind of said, well, you should aim for 6 feet, should be okay with kids most of the time. If you can't get to 6 feet, 3 should be good enough. So that's a little gray there, yeah.
That's what was behind my question about masks, because if they're going to be 3 feet, that's fine as long as they have a decent mask. But if they don't have a decent mask, then
Yeah.
that's trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by decent masks. They're not wearing N95s. It's not recommended, and we're not, yeah. But they're wearing face coverings. All the children are, and all the teachers are. Teachers who are getting really close to kids, if they're a teacher's aide, or if it's a special education child or a special need where they are really close to them, they're looking at extra PPE, and we've, advised them a little bit, and the hospital has too. Barb McCarthy's been great from infection control at the hospital. She's on the task force, and so she's helping them feel more comfortable there.
No, I'm just thinking.
Yeah. No, you're correct. They, need that protection, and they definitely are very, very anxious about returning to school in that environment. And
well, thank goodness our caseload is extraordinarily low.
Exactly.
For now.
I wouldn't want to be in
For now.
Yeah,
Exactly. I think, again, that's where the challenge will come. We don't have any clear position. We don't even really have like thresholds of when we should start to go in the other direction, kind of like when we came out of this. And I don't imagine that the governor's office will set like a threshold and say, okay, Lynn, your schools need to close, or they should go, to less capacity. I think it's going to be each Board of Health, each school committee looking at the metrics in their community and trying to make some decisions. And that it will be an incredible, there'll be so much attention to it and concern on both sides as the numbers start to go up. So that's where I anticipate our work will come back in when the numbers start to rise and we have our first little cluster at Plum Cove, and people will be anxious. And what do we do? Do we close everything? Do we go hybrid? Do we go remote for a month? And these are the kinds of decisions that I think we'll get some more guidance from the state by November, but I don't know if it'll be really super clear. And it'll be challenging because people are very emotional, very, very emotional about schools.
Yeah.
Good reason.
Yeah, on both sides, right. Families and kids are climbing the walls, going crazy, trying to figure out care and learning and childcare and work. And then there's issues with them being in school too. And what we're seeing right now is a whole bunch, this kind of halfway thing. Rich sent a good article in their epidemiologists that say it's almost the worst, because you're putting kids in school half-time, and then the younger kids are in school, they're out of school so much of the time that there's all these pods starting and after school programs and different arrangements. And so kids are then leaving their school pod and they're going to their Y group and another 30 kids they're exposed to, and then they go home and then they go to another daycare arrangement. So it's problematic once we have a lot of community transmission. That kind of movement of kids will just create more issues for us. It's a lot more exposure. But for now, if it gets kids in school part-time learning and connecting, then I think it's worth doing.
I've heard a number of epidemiologists and infectious disease docs talking about this. One was drawing a big distinction between 10-year-olds and younger and 10-year-olds and older. The younger a kid, older, you should treat like adults.
Say that again. I didn't understand what you said.
Can you move a little closer to your microphone, please, Rich?
10-year-olds, 10 years is sort of the cutoff. Those younger, 10 and younger, are treated like children. They seem to get less disease, but et cetera. Any kid older than 10, we should treat like an adult in terms of the severity of the disease, et cetera, et cetera.
But Rich, isn't there the chance, though, they're also still carriers?
There's a chance, yes. And there's a lot that we don't know. I think that's the bottom line. We're still sorting it all out.
Yep.
I've also heard a number say that they would rather people be not social distancing and wear good face protection than not wear face protection and social distance.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is just a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Whoa.
Anything else, or should we move on?
That's all I have for tonight.
I
Yeah.
think that's quite
That's
enough.
enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.
Any concerns of the board?
Huh?
Huh? Any concerns of the board?
Well, I was just wondering about what the mayor is tasking us to do in terms of writing a letter and how to, move forward with that, or.
Yeah, I'll follow up. I think she's asking for you guys to support asking the state for help with our homeless community. So I will, we've drafted something, so I will get that to you guys and you can jump on and sort of sign on to that as well. The state doesn't seem to have any office or person that's taking this on. And I know Action has been very, very frustrated because they're part of statewide committees and groups where they're dealing, with other shelters, and there doesn't seem to be any plan. There doesn't seem to be any motion towards making a plan. So it's, they might get there, but in the meanwhile, we're all sitting here going, what are we going to do? The other thing this year too that's particularly tricky is that we can't do some of the arrangements we've done as easily, like on a snow day or a really cold weekend. We've let the shelters stay open, or we've had the Grace Center, and during the lockdown, if we do go to being shut down more, those things are kind of impossible. Those are harder to provide for, given staff and spacing. And so it's just a lot of challenges. And I think, that's what she's concerned about. And I am too, we all are. So I'll draft something and have you guys work on it, and we can then send it as well, in addition to her saying it.
Great.
Any other concerns we should discuss?
No. Max, I went looking at the pollution levels on the beach, how there are occasional terribly high spikes. Is there anything unusual that's causing that? It's so odd that it's so low and then these huge high numbers. You got a sense of what's going on? And like a Good Harbor Creek, it goes from 40 to 173 in a day.
We had to keep the creek closed for quite a bit because even though the numbers went down fairly well, it's called the geometric mean. So
Yeah.
it's basically an average of over 5 tests.
Yeah.
They can't be over 35, and they went way over 35 for a while.
What is this?
So it does tend to be seasonal. We do testing before the beach is really open for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it isn't until July, and a lot of it probably has to do with, there's a human impact for sure, but it's also water temperature, so bacteria grows faster. I don't know what's going on in the upper marsh. I was hoping that some of the repair work the DPW had done on some of the sewer lines, I suspect it may have been an issue, but
Okay.
they did their work, and it's a mystery.
right.
Some of it is storm action.
I just feel obliged to ask because it does stick out so.
Yeah, no, I agree, Fred. It's been a mystery that we've been trying to wrestle down for a while. We've been in communication with Division of Marine Fisheries, who also have their own concerns, obviously, for this, and trying to figure out what's the source. Is it just birds in the upper marsh? Who knows? But I think humans have something to do with it, for sure.
Yeah. And Karen, just in my reading about what Rosalina Castro is doing for the city as a retired person, I mean, it's really, truly remarkable. I'd like you to extend a thank you.
I will.
She's doing this as a
brilliant.
volunteer?
Pardon me?
Is she doing this as a volunteer?
She's doing it all. She's working with us part-time on the Mass in Motion grant. And so she rides the seniors on the Go bus. They're walking and they're going to Open Door and whatnot. And she's so great because she really talks to the seniors, finds out what they need and want. And then she pushes us all to, they don't want the standard box Open Door. They don't want, to be picked up at 8 a.m. or she tells us what they need, and then we can adjust the programs. So huge success
and
there.
This is not part-time. What she's doing is
No,
not
I
part-time.
mean, she's doing, she does a ton
really
with
open
that.
service.
Yep. And then she continues to volunteer with a number of different things in the community. She wants to work on the flu clinics if we have them. What else is she volunteering? Oh, at the polls. You know, she's just everywhere, and it's
Yeah,
quite
with the
amazing.
meals program decimated at the senior center, her work is so important because the options that seniors have now are so limited, and their isolation is dreadful.
Yeah.
So I'm really impressed to read this. It raises my spirit.
Yeah, and just to watch them teaming up with Elise, who is the new director of the senior center, nice hire. Fred was on that selection committee. They're really, it's exciting. It's a lot of great energy, and they're getting so many neat things done. Elise said this morning on the call that they had something like 15 people, seniors, participate in chair yoga over the internet, you know, Zoom like this. And that's never been tried, and they loved it, and they loved seeing the teacher, and it's just fabulous. So it's fun to watch them go.
Yeah.
Do these
It's
great
not all
things.
bad news. It's, I guess, what we're
Exactly,
saying.
exactly.
And this city is rising to the occasion. It's very dramatic, and I'm proud of us.
Yeah, me too.
Next meeting, I don't have a calendar in front of me.
October 1st.
October the 1st.
October 1st,
Yep.
sound reasonable?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, getting used to this Zooming.
Yeah.
I have to admit, the chair and the temperature is a lot more comfortable at home than at the theater building.
It's true.
All of a sudden, it's getting dark. It was
Yeah.
last month. It was light, and we could
Yeah.
I
walk
know.
and see
I know.
the sunset after the meeting.
Yeah, happening fast.
And you know,
All
cold,
right,
cold. So we're gonna have to come up with something for the homeless. Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. We'll talk soon, and you'll be getting materials to read, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, all.
Good night, one and all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Karen and
Thanks, Bobby.
Karen, hi. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you going to be calling RNs to help with the flu clinics?
I'm not sure if they're going to need volunteers, but if you're interested or have someone, I'll connect you. We'll connect you when they're ready for that. If we do the normal bigger clinics, we definitely will.
Right, because my mom, she said she usually gets a call from you guys by now, and
Yeah, okay, right, because we use those volunteers, yeah. So we'll reach out to the old volunteers that helped us last year. Thank you, that's a good reminder. And then if we may still need them later in the sort of phase 2, but yeah, thanks.
I said I'd ask, so.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Bye, Bobby.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good night, one and
Bye,
all.
folks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.